you know as well as I do, anytime you try something new for the first time, there's a tendency for it not to go right. So he called the meetings Failure Friday, but everybody had to come back with something that they had attempted and tried new for the first time. So I think shifting from seeing failure as fatal to failure as a lesson, and success leaves clues, failures leaves clues as well.
What is up, friends? Rob here, and I'm back with a brand new Spitting Fire podcast interview for all of you today. And I'm with my man all the way here in North Mississippi, where I live. He's a serial kingdom entrepreneur, Mr. Corey Lee. Corey, will you say what's up to everybody real quickly?
Hey, what is up, everybody? And Rob, thank you so much for the opportunity, and really just looking forward to adding value to you and your listeners, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I know you're going to spit some serious fire today, my man. And before we dive into that, or what Corey would call the meat and potatoes, before we dive into that today, I want to remind you guys the reason why we do this is to compel you, actually more than that, to divinely inspire you to be the leader that I believe God has called all of you to be. And I live my life by this mantra, and I preach it all the time, and I'll keep preaching it to the day I die, that all of us were created on purpose for a purpose. And isn't it about time that we start living on purpose in 2022? So I pray that something that Corey and I talk about today will inspire you to start betting on yourself and saying, it's my time to win. So Corey, once again, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I'm excited about what you're going to share today. But as always, I always like to start the interviews off by having the guests give us a 30,000 foot view of their story, maybe some of the past, where you're from, where you came from, up into some of that transition time, up into what you're doing today.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And I love what you said, kingdom serial entrepreneur, because I guess that's basically what I am. I do a lot of leadership training and development right now. I go in and really my goal is to come in and work with their teams and develop a culture of leadership of exactly what you talked about, of bringing out the best in people in an organization, working with entrepreneurs. But my background is actually in the medical field, and my wife and I are both from here in North Mississippi, but we got married and we moved off. We moved off and lived in North Alabama. We lived in South Mississippi and then Phoenix, Arizona. And during those times, Rob, I was working. My wife, she was in college, and man, we had $8 to live on, right? And it was just one of those things where it was a great time, but it was always one of those dreams that we had inside of us. We'd be driving around town and we would say, wouldn't it be cool if we had our own physical therapy clinic? Because that's what we did. And wouldn't it be cool too if this physical therapy didn't only just do physical therapy? What if we had a gym with it as well? And it was one of those dreams that we had, and one of those dreams that, I don't know about you or your listeners, but many times you have a dream like that and it always seems so far off. Like, I don't know if we'll ever get to that, but that's really awesome if we could do that. And we were in Phoenix and decided to move back to Tupelo. And when we moved back, in a 5-year period of time, we had built 2 physical therapy clinics. We had 4 gyms, 3 kids. And in that 5-year period of time, sold all the businesses and kept all the kids, like I like to say, and then transitioned into doing what I do now, which is helping other leaders build their teams, empower and equip other people so they can not only maximize their dreams, but pull it out of the people they lead. And a lot of the things I talk about are lessons that I learned from failure. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fun. So that's kind of a 30,000 foot view, background physical therapy, now in developing leaders who develop leaders.
Well, there's a couple of nuggets that I want to kind of explore there, dig out, if you will, and maybe expound on some more. One is about the dreams.
Yeah.
Right. You said, wouldn't it be cool? Like it sounds like it comes out so nonchalantly at it when you say it that way. But what did you have to do? Like, what kind of breakthrough or what kind of action did you have to take in order to see those dreams to become a reality? Because there's people watching right now, Corey, they're going, I have dreams too, but what's it going to take for me to really go after those dreams? And here's the second part of that, despite the possibility of failing. Can you expound on that just a little bit?
Absolutely. So there's this thing in leadership, we talk about the law of sacrifice. And here's what the law of sacrifice says, is that leaders, you got to be willing to give up in order to go up. So we give up things of a lesser value in order to gain things of a greater value. So that was a dream of ours forever, right? And I just want to paint this picture for a moment. I was working, my wife's in college. I would gas up the cars, I'd get paid on a Friday, pay the bills, get our groceries. We would have $8 to live on for 2 weeks.
Wow.
We were finally moved back to Tupelo, Mississippi. Both of us have jobs. She's getting paid great, and she's getting an opportunity to work from home before that's even a thing, right? And I'm making more than I'd ever made as a physical therapist assistant. Had an easy job, Rob. It was easy. I could go to work, all right? I could go to work at 8 and be finished at 12. It was easy. I got paid for a full day. But I knew that there was something inside of me, that there was time. I knew I was made for something more. And it was in that moment that I'm a person of faith, much like you. I prayed about it, and I knew it was time. But I knew if I made that decision, I was going to have to give up something. I was going to have to give up a easy, comfortable job. I was going to have to give up working easy and having a guaranteed paycheck to uncertainty and the unknown. But I also knew, because my wife and I worked for the same place, and she basically ran the thing, that if I made that decision, she was going to lose her job too.
Wow.
So it wasn't an easy decision, right? But I knew that there was something inside of me saying, you got to make the decision. And that's what happened. You give up something of a lesser value in order to gain something of a greater value. You have to bet on yourself. And that's what we did. And precisely what happened when I said that, my wife did lose her job, but God provided. And it was quickly that we were able to bring both of us on. And as a leader, you're always giving up in order to go up. We call, success. John Maxwell talks about it. Success is uphill, but it's uphill all the way.
Sure.
And that means as you continue to climb, that you're giving up things in order to gain things of a greater value. And so for that listener, what I would say is you have to bet on yourself, but you also have to identify what is of a greater value. Is that dream inside of you worth that lesser thing, or is it a greater thing? So I think it's identifying what your values are and betting on yourself too.
Yeah. And when I thought about what I was saying, or what I said earlier when I was kind of introducing this part of it, is I don't mean nonchalantly like you weren't passionate about it, but as you well know, we look back on risk now and we go, really, it wasn't that much of a risk. Like it was far greater for me to chase my dream looking back, but it's easier to say it from this position. But if you're watching today, here's what Corey's really saying. Is your dream for sale? See, a lot of times we have a dream, and what happens is fear, worry, anxiety, kinfolk is how they say here in Mississippi, people's opinions and labels they project on us talk us out of it. And we sell what I believe our birthright is a lot of times for that little bowl of soup, if you will, that we read about we've read about in the Old Testament. So I'm speaking a little Christianese there for those that are not faith-based. Go read it in the Old Testament. But so I love what you're saying there. But Corey, as a coach, because you're a certified coach with the John Maxwell team and company, why is it hard for so many people to accept the fact that failure is just part of this whole journey? It's almost like even as a Christian, people think we get a free pass or get out of jail free card when it comes to failure. Will you talk about that?
Yeah, and I think people see failure as fatal, right? But failure is simply just feedback. It's only once I actually take them, when I take that step that I get some feedback. Many times we're standing there, should I do this? Should I not do this? Can I, can't I? But it's only once you make that decision to take the step that you get some feedback to say, okay, I did make the right decision, or that wasn't the right decision, but how do I re-navigate that? And I think it's having a sense of that failure is not fatal. You're going to make mistakes, but I'm telling you, I told you in the beginning in my intro that some of the best lessons I've come up with are the lessons from my failures. One of the best lessons in that is why it's so important to develop leaders, to empower leaders, because we built one of the businesses we had was in a town of 1,100 people, Rob, 1,100. And we built that to when we sold, we were billing out over $2 million a year in a town of 1,100 people. But when we sold, shortly after, the business started to go down. And I started watching that. And the reason it was because it was built on me. I hadn't developed leaders. I hadn't empowered other people. It was dependent upon me. And when you do that, you not only hurt your business or put a cap on your business, you put a cap on your people too. So those are lessons that I learned the hard way. But kind of going back to failure, I would say I had a mentor one time, and he's built multi-million-dollar businesses. We're actually you and I are going through one of his programs now called Paul Martinelli. And he did this thing. He had a janitorial company. And every Friday he would have a meeting with his team, and he called them Failure Fridays. And he said everybody on the team had to do something in the week. They had to try something new for the first time. And and you know as well as I do, anytime you try something new for the first time, there's a tendency for it not to go right. So he called the meetings Failure Friday, but everybody had to come back with something that they had attempted and tried new for the first time. So I think shifting from seeing failure as fatal to failure as a lesson, and success leaves clues, failures leaves clues as well. So
yeah, I love that, man. That may be the title of your next book, that failure is not fatal, but failure is simply feedback. So if it becomes a New York Times bestseller, think of the little people when that happens. But no, I totally agree. It's interesting, even as faith-based or Christian entrepreneurs, how many times we see as God doing something to us when we fail, when in reality, it's a teacher. It helps us grow and mature, and we can repurpose it, and use it as fuel to push us or fuel us towards our dreams. So I love what you're saying there. Let me ask you this though. How did you know you wanted to be a coach? Right? I watch a lot of interviews like this, and people talk about what they're doing, but a lot of times they never talk about how they knew. Like, was this an epiphany moment? Was this just something one day you woke up? Was it something you saw someone else doing and you go, man, I really think that could be my 10. Can you talk about how you knew you wanted to be a coach that would empower others?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I'd never even really heard of a coach. When I thought about a coach, I thought about sports, thought about my football coach, baseball coach.
Right.
So, kind of in that season, we had sold our businesses, our physical therapy clinic. And that's another one of those, kind of going back to stepping out. We knew that season was over with, and it was, I don't know what we're going to step into, but I know it's one of those things of I'm giving up in order to go up. So we had sold our businesses, and I remember having a conversation with my wife of like, we were doing this leadership stuff in our business. We saw some growth. We definitely learned some lessons. I want to impact more people. I want to work with leaders who will go out and develop other leaders. And I had no idea what in the world I was trying to say. But the very next day, Rob, I'm telling you, Facebook listens to your conversations, because I had an ad from John Maxwell about becoming a coach. And so I clicked on it, and I was like, that right there, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. That right there. And honestly, I didn't even know you could build a business. I didn't know anybody. I wasn't even expecting people to pay me to come alongside of them and coach, right? I just knew I wanted to make an impact on people who would go out and make an impact on other people. I was not interested in people who needed counseling, had no desire for that. I want to work with people who would go out, they would develop other people. And so really, to answer your question, man, I didn't even know anything about coaching. I just kind of fell into it. And as I started getting into it, I saw the power of it, and where there's a multiplication factor that kicks in whenever you come alongside the leaders. You help them develop, because they are going to go out and develop other people. So I know other people probably have better stories than that as how they got into coaching. But I'll be honest, I didn't know anything about coaching before I got into it.
Well, I love what you're saying, though, because I think so many times people that watch these interviews, and listen, you know this about me, man, I'm a content junkie. Like I'm guilty. I probably need to go to help and go to one of those meetings or something. But what's interesting to me is a lot of times you hear about pursuing your purpose, or your purpose don't chase you, you chase your, you hear all these different things. But I love what you're saying, because I think there's some people out there that are just have test drove so many different things, right? I'm one of those. And you just said, hey, you know, I kind of fell into that. And I think it takes test driving a lot of things. I think it takes, you know, taste testing, if you will, a lot of different opportunities before you find that right fit. And once again, I think it goes back to so many people are scared to even do that. They think if they don't get it on the first or second try, that somehow they've missed their calling, when in reality is, for me, it took me many years to really, I knew who I was, like identity wise, but I didn't really know how to translate that into like a profession or what I wanted to do. I just knew that I loved life. I knew that I loved God, and I knew that I loved people.
Yeah.
And so I love what you're saying there. Let me ask you this. What have you seen, or what do you think, in your opinion, is the number one hurdle that keeps people from hiring a coach?
I would say, I don't know what keeps people from hiring a coach. I would think it has to be authenticity, though, because I hire coaches, right? I've had a coach, and I want a coach that's going to be authentic. I honestly don't care anything about your certifications. That's just me, right? Personally, I know that matters to some people, but I want to know that somebody who's going to be very authentic, not just tell me what I want to hear, but who's going to come alongside of me, who wants my success just as much as I want my success. And that's something I found about coming alongside of people, is that most people don't have somebody in their life that believes in them and that cares about their success just as much as that individual does, outside of maybe their spouse or their mom and them, you know? And that's a powerful thing when you got somebody that says, man, I see this in you, I believe this in you, and I want to help you get there and hold you accountable. And one thing I've learned about accountability, Rob, is that accountability is an account for your ability, not your inability, right? I see this in you, Rob, and you know, I know you're doing good, but I see this in you. This is the bar that I see in you. I want to help you get there. And it's just, as far as not hiring people, I don't know what other people look for, but if I'm in the market for a coach, I'm looking for somebody who's going to be authentic, who's going to be there and wants my success just as much as I do.
Sure. And maybe the better phrase is, I think hiring a coach is an investment.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people don't realize that. And I love what you said, you know, that it's a lot of people think, and let's be honest about it. There's a lot of coaches out there that just look to point the bad out in people. And it's that old hard mentality. I'm not saying there isn't some of that needed, you know, to kind of, you know, say, hey, you know, let's get this act together. But I'm a firm believer in coaching and empowering people the way that God does that to us. Absolutely. Right. It's his kindness that leads us to repentance. And I live my life from a posture of being fully loved and fully accepted by the Father, not because Rob is so great, but because his love and his grace is so great. So I love that. Do you think a lot of people kind of have that challenge or hurdle because they think a coach is just going to point out everything wrong in them? And maybe the industry has some of that, or maybe it's prevalent. I don't know. But do you think that's one of the hurdles that some people face?
Yeah, I think sometimes, having that, you know, that mentality, because I don't know what kind of coaches you had in sports, right? Or if you've ever had a great coach, you know, that's the way they lean, is they pull out the best. But the majority of ones who are scratching and clawing and trying to make it and trying to force things to happen, they'll tell you about all the mistakes and all the bad things. And I'm saying it's not that we overlook that, exactly like you're talking about.
Sure.
Most people have not had somebody come alongside of them and introduce them to their potential. I've seen some of yours, and I've listened to some of your podcasts, and every successful person, I guarantee you, and even if you and I talk, every successful person I've met and talked to, they all have some kind of story that goes something like this. They believed in me before I believed in myself. There was somebody who came alongside of them that saw something in them, believed in them before they did even themselves. It could be a parent, a grandparent, coach, friend, mentor, coach, you know, like myself. But somebody has come alongside and believed in them before they believed in themselves, and they borrowed somebody else's belief in themselves. And I think that's a powerful thing. Very powerful thing.
Yeah. And if you're watching this today, please don't send me emails and saying, you know, you don't know what a real coach is. I'm not saying coaches don't get on to people and confront things. What I'm saying is I think a lot of times people think a coach is all about kicking butt, taking names, slapping people around, and being critical and policing everything. I don't believe that's a true coach. I believe a true coach does have some hard conversations. We have to have those. But I believe more than that, they empower through a spirit of, hey, I want God's best for you.
Yeah.
Like, I legitimately want God's best for you. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I have found in the people that I have empowered and coached and have been a catalyst for, that if I'm able to, if they know that I truly love them in the 3 foot, if you will, they will follow me to the 10 foot and beyond. Have you seen that in your life as well?
Absolutely. And John Maxwell says it this way: you got to touch a heart, or you got to touch a heart before you ask for a hand, right? You got to serve people and gain that trust.
Yeah.
And then you go from there. And I wanted to mention something too about you talking about the hard conversations. I'm not saying you don't have those at all. You got to have those. But whenever I'm coaching someone, and, you know, if we're coaching, you make a commitment and you don't uphold your commitment, I'm not so much concerned about you not actually doing what you said you would do. I'm concerned about why. What is the excuse that you've told yourself? So I want to ask, like, well, help me understand, you know, what led you not to do what you said you would do? You committed this to yourself. You said, I'm going to do this, but you didn't do it. I want to understand why, because there's something deeper there. And the same excuse that you give yourself in one area, it's typically, when I give myself an excuse, it's the same excuse I use in other areas of my life too. And that's really what we get down to. That's what you can free people with right there. Yeah.
And I like the way Ed Milet puts it. He talks about breaking promises to ourselves. And the way I say it, piggybacking off of that, is it's really hard to live that John 10:10 life, that life abundantly, when we're always breaking promises to ourselves. Right. And so I love what you're saying. Entrepreneurs, right? You're a kingdom serial entrepreneur. I've kind of thrown that out there. You know, you're kingdom minded. You're all about building the kingdom through entrepreneurism. What do you believe is one of the top traits every entrepreneur needs to possess?
You know, I think there's several. I would say stuff like being able to communicate and to connect. That's a big one. Being able to communicate and connect. They're different. I'll tell you the number one, though. I think, Rob, this is my opinion, is you got to know what your values are. And you got to know your values up front. You got to know what your non-negotiables are. And you got to know those up front before the emotions get high. And you know, when you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you're going to have all kinds of opportunities. And you've got to know which of those opportunities you're willing and unwilling to do. If somebody comes to you with a bag full of millions for you to take some shortcuts or to take a bribe, are you willing to take it? Like, and you gotta state up front, I'm unwilling to be bought. So for me, I think the most important thing is knowing what your values are, what you hold valuable. And I think they're going to be different as you have your own businesses and those, but having those values, when you get opportunities, you get challenges, you can say, is it a match? Is it not a match? It makes decision-making a whole lot easier. And I can tell you this, decision-making is probably one of the best skills that you can grow and develop, is the ability to make good decisions. So knowing your values will help you do that.
So let's be real practical in this moment, right? And we're in a coaching session. Give me some of Corey's values. Like, what if somebody goes, I don't even know really, I mean, I know we're all adults here, most people are watching this, but what if somebody just doesn't even know what really their values are? Right? Can you give us some examples of some values that Corey has that maybe could be a catalyst for someone else to start writing down their values?
Absolutely. I'll tell you my 5, but one of the things I do whenever I do coaching, that's one of the things we'll do is we'll go through a values thing. And sometimes, it takes a little bit of digging for you to understand those core. So I've got a whole process that we go through to figure out your core values. And I really like to start with 5, but I'll tell you my 5. Number 1 is legacy. Number 1, that's my number 1 value, is I want to build something that carries out to the next generation. And I'm talking about financially, I'm talking about values, and I'm talking about faith, to where that I can hand the baton, that it goes to one generation to the next, right? So legacy is one, growth is another one. You talked about you're a conference junkie. Hey man, I am too. I'm all in, Rob. I put the ring on it. I'm committed. Growth is one. Fitness is another one for me. That is a core value. So every day I'm gonna do something health and fitness related. It's it's honestly, for me, it's a way to rejuvenate. It's just something I enjoy doing. Faith is top value, and family is a top value. And I want to go back to something I said about knowing what your values are. You got to know those up front. See, I do not like just regurgitating information. Whenever I speak and train, I don't want to just read a book and regurgitate information. I want to give you something that I've lived out. And I've learned these top 5 a hard way, because there was a time in our life we had gyms and physical therapy clinics. Right. I hadn't developed any leaders. I was doing everything. So I would be at the gym from 4:30 in the morning to 7:30 in the morning, coaching our CrossFit classes. Then I would walk across to our physical therapy from 8 to 4:30. I'd be in physical therapy from 4:30 to 8:30 at night. I'd be at a CrossFit gym. And one day, our oldest son, Colton, he was still young, and I was telling him good night at 4:30 in the afternoon, because I wouldn't see him again until the next morning. And he looked up at me, Rob, and he said, "Daddy, you going to your house?" And it was in that moment I was like, oh, wow, I'm spending way too much time. I say faith and family are my core values, but I'm not really living those out. And it was in that moment that really was a huge shift for me, when a 3-year-old asked me, "Daddy, you going to your house?" That something's got to change. And that was the moment that I really started diving into leadership and understanding the importance of living values, but empowering other people too.
Yeah. And I just want to stop and just let that sink in. That's a very sobering thought, right? That's a very sobering statement. Maybe some of you watching today, you're not matching the core values that maybe you wrote down in some exercise, because you just did it to do it, but you didn't really take time to meditate on that, right? To really think about that. And maybe you're not living that out because you're allowing the doing part to be more than just the being part, right? The being a father, the being a husband, the being with your creator. And I know I'm guilty of that too. I struggle with the doing because I'm a high producer, high activity guy, but really taking time to really map out those core values. So how does your faith play? What role does your faith, or how does your faith play into all your entrepreneurism and all parts of your life?
Yeah, well, it's actually how I start my day, as I spend time, and I really try to listen to the voice of the Lord in my life when I hear those promptings. And I tell you, sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense in the moment, but man, He's so good and never let me down. So in the decisions that I make, Proverbs says, "Commit your work to the Lord, and He will establish your thoughts." Think about that. If I make a commitment, if I put a ring on it, that I'm committing what I'm doing to the Lord, He'll establish my thoughts. There's something that happens in my thought pattern whenever I commit my work and my ways. And those decisions, I go back to that decision to step out to open up our PT clinic the first time. When I was sitting around, Rob, I had me a sheet of paper, man. I drew me out a map. I had all the places of all the physical therapy clinics. I had them all. I knew where all of them were. I knew how far they would be. And I was sitting there with my little paper, and I was thinking, man, my mama's going to be so proud of me. Ooh, I can't wait to tell her what I'm about to do. Wait till my friends hear what I'm about to do. And it was in that moment I heard the Lord kind of nudge me. He kind of woke me up to my thoughts that, you're trying to build this for you. So I immediately stopped and I prayed that, if this is the way I'm going to build it, before I say amen, take this desire out of me. And He did, took it out of me. And several months later, the desire started coming back. So I went for a 60-mile bike ride, Rob, and me and the Lord prayed, and I committed that business to Him. And, we talked about the plans and all of that. But also, when that season was over with, we were at the peak. We were doing really good. And He told me it was time to let it go. And I loved it, Rob. I did, man. It was good. And it didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense in the moment. But I chose, again, to sell and to step out into the unknown. There was nowhere else for me to go. But each time, man, He's just taken further. And so I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit there, but decision making. and allowing him to speak into my business and allowing his voice to lead and not just relying on my wisdom. It makes me look good. I tell you, it makes me sound wise when I'm really not.
Well, let me ask you this, because there's somebody probably watching this that goes, well, how do I get God to speak to me? Yeah. Right? What is something just practical, something that someone could start today to start hearing the voice of God, if you will?
Yeah, well, from my own experience and helping other people, just ask. He's right there from my experience. Like he's just standing there waiting. Like God's not far from you. He's a God that's close by. And I truly believe if you seriously right now, just stop and truly ask and truly listen and not be attached to the way he's going to speak. See, sometimes I get attached to the way he's going to speak. And whenever he doesn't speak the way I think he's going to speak, I sometimes miss what he's saying. So I would highly encourage you just to stop and ask and listen. And I believe wholeheartedly that he'll speak to you 100%. So that may not be as profound as you want to hear as you're listening, but I think that's the awesomeness of it. It's so simple.
Yeah, it's really the simple gospel, right? It's really, I think we've made it more complicated, harder than what it is. I told somebody today, it's as simple as just drawing near.
Yeah.
Right. He doesn't give us a 10-step formula. It's literally just waving the white flag of surrender and just drawing near. And I love James chapter 1, because he says that if any of us lack wisdom, ask, and that he is wanting to give it to us generously, that he will not withhold from us. And so I totally agree. It's just simply as asking, simple, just drawing near. What is the difference between an entrepreneur and a kingdom entrepreneur? Is there some differences that you can think of?
Yeah, I think, well, when I think of a kingdom entrepreneur, there's a certain value set that you uphold, right? We talked about values, and you can come up with your own values. I think you need to have those. When I think about kingdom value, there's certain kingdom principles that come in mind, and that's serving other people. I think it's having a servant mentality, but also what we just talked about is being open to hearing the voice of the Lord in your life and allowing him to make decisions and or lead you in those decisions. And again, I'll go back to when we sold our physical therapy clinic. It didn't make sense, but looking back is one of the best decisions, because the physical therapy industry as a whole actually started to shift big time, and reimbursement is going down. And it just listening to him in decision making when sometimes it doesn't make sense. It just being willing to listen there. So kingdom minded, there's a certain set of values and morals, but also committing what you do to the Lord. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a challenge, right? To build the kingdom of me, myself, and I, or to build the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
And it's using entrepreneurism or your entrepreneur giftings and talents and skill set to ultimately not further your kingdom, but further his. And so I definitely love that. As a coach and as a leader, one who empowers other people, what is one leadership trait, principle, habit that you have learned, that you've cultivated in your own life, and that you lead others from? Is there one that rises to the top?
Yeah, and it's having some simple disciplines, practicing some simple disciplines daily. I think Jim Rohn talks about there's a formula for success and there's a formula for failure, right? And the formula for success he talks about is a few, not a bunch, but a few simple disciplines practiced daily. And the formula for failure is a few errors in judgment repeated every day. So both the formula for success and failure is simple and few repeated day in and day out. So for me, I'll tell you some of my disciplines, but I think for your listeners, one of the best things you can do is understand what kind of business you're in and understand where you want to go. And then what are 5 things you can do day in and day out, day in and day out to get to where you want to go. So for me, I look at what I want to be. I want to be an international speaker, coach, trainer. I want to equip leaders from all over the world that go out and develop leaders. So somebody who's doing that, what are they doing day in and day out?
Sure.
So I look back, well, they're probably reading books. So every day I read. Every day I pray, and every day I'm exercising. It goes back to my core values that we talked about. Every day I'm developing content. Some of it never used my whole life. And then the biggest one, Rob, I'll tell you, one of the biggest game changers for me is setting aside time to reflect at the end of each day. A daily reflection thing, it allows you to see, we talked about failure and success and those kind of things. Well, in those are some lessons. People talk about experience as the greatest teacher, but it's really evaluated experience that's the greatest teacher. It's when you evaluate those lessons that it allows those experiences, it allows those lessons to catch up with you. So I've got a reflection process. At the end of the day, I ask myself like 7 questions. And then at the end of the week, I'll reflect. And it just allows me to see where I'm at. And that's for me. For you as an entrepreneur, business owner, just look at where you want to go. What are some simple disciplines of somebody who's gaining success in that area? What could you do day in, day out? Corey, what you do on the weekend? Well, I do these 5 things. What you do on vacation? Rob, I just got back from vacation. I did those 5 things every day, right? Simple to do, day in and day out. So that's what I would recommend.
Sure. And so someone like me, always going, always running, it's hard to slow down. Maybe there's somebody out there watching right now when this drops, that's the same way. What is that time of reflection look at? Is that in the car? Is that on the couch? Is it the swimming pool? Is that the Starbucks? Like where do you do that? Is it multiple places? And then also, do you mind just sharing one of the questions you ask yourself?
Absolutely. I'll share all of them. I think wherever you're going to be able to be committed to doing that. For me, it's at the very end of the day. After the kids have laid down, I go to my little chair and I sit there. So I think your place needs to be consistent as well. Whatever that looks like for you, it needs to be simple as well. You can't force yourself to do it. Otherwise, it won't get done. So It needs to be easy to do, simple to do. And it doesn't have to be the way I do it. It doesn't have to be the way Rob does it, but it needs to work for you. So if it's on the treadmill at 5 a.m. and you're reflecting on the previous day, that's all good. I'll say this, and then I'll share some of my questions. When we were in the gym and I would work with people, they want to lose weight. They would always say, well, I've thought about this diet and I've thought about this diet. Which diet you think is best? And I was like, just pick one. Whichever one you're going to stick to is the one that's going to work. All of them work. Just pick one, right? So whenever it comes to this process, pick a time that works for you. For me, it works better at night, and I do my other stuff in the morning. For you, it may be flip-flop. So I'll tell you my little 7 questions I got in my little notebook here. I do it at the end of every day. And the first one, the way I came up with these questions was based off of, one, my values and my vision for where I want to go in life. So the first one is I asked, like, what did God teach me today? So if I say faith is a core value of mine, I don't want to just go on blind faith. I truly want to be led. And number 2 is what did I learn today? If growth is an important thing, I don't want to just be a conference junkie or just read the books. What am I getting out of it that I can apply? And then I asked number 3, was I generous financially? So what did I give of my time, my talent, and my treasure? You a pastor, you know the blessing that comes with generosity. So I highly encourage you to, if you're listening, to live generously. The next one is, did I lead my family well? I want to ask that. I want to, again, goes back to legacy. Did I have a new idea for today, Rob? Hey, I'm always looking for ideas, always looking for opportunities. Was a new idea? What was one win for the day? I want to capture one win. I guarantee you, so many people get focused on the stress of the day or the challenges of the day, but you had some wins in the day.
Sure.
And what happens whenever I capture that win? It helps me to stay in this attitude of thanksgiving and gratitude. And it's awesome. The last one is, did I compromise? And I want to pause on that one for a second. What I started noticing, Rob, was in my area of giftedness, what I may be good at, I sometimes tended to rely on the gift and not on my preparation. And so I could show up, and in my area of giftedness, let's just say speaking, I could show up in my area of giftedness and people would say, that was really good. But I knew I didn't put my all into it. I didn't prepare. I didn't do the energy. I didn't do the things necessary of a level 10 person, of somebody in that 1% that we talk about would do. So I call that compromise. And so those are my questions that I try to ask every day. It literally takes 5 minutes once I've kind of gotten into it. So it's been pretty powerful.
And I think the last one is a pretty powerful question to ask because, once again, if we're all to be just extremely brutally honest to ourselves, we've done that, as one who was a church planner, pastor, God's gifted me with the gift of communication. There's been seasons in my life where I just rested in the giftedness.
Yeah.
But I did a disservice to those people and to myself, ultimately to my creator, because I didn't prepare the way that I known that I should have prepared. Yeah. And so I think that's a very sobering question for all of us to ask. If you're watching today, maybe you have fallen into that trap, right? And many of us do, if not all of us, that's different seasons where we're relying more on the giftedness and not taking the time to prepare, because preparation really is what breeds the excellence. Mm-hmm. Right? We see it in the Michael Jordans and the Kobe Bryants and all the other star athletes and non-athletes and whatever, niche they're in. You see those that are doing it at the highest level have really focused on preparation. One of the guys that I follow, Coach Michael Burt, calls it long obedience in the same direction, right? It's learning how to be consistently obedient in the same direction. And as you talked about, that compounds like interest, right? Those habits compound and stack and stack and stack. So I definitely love that. As we get ready to close today, I ask everybody this that comes on the podcast, if there was one word you would use to describe Corey Lee, what would that one word be?
Oh, man. I would use, that is a great question. I would use joy. I just filled with joy. I heard a lot of people, or some people will come up to me and use the word humility. Mm-hmm. And I receive that, but joy, I talk to our daughter all the time. Don't let anybody steal your joy, right? Don't let anybody steal your joy. So sure. I feel like I'm full of joy, but also give out joy. And it's a genuine joy. I just feel it down in my bones, Rob, but I say a person of joy. And it's funny to say I'm a person of humility. It's almost kind of like, what was it? Moses was the most humble man, and he was the one that wrote it. It's kind of funny, but
you're like, I'm the most humble millionaire. Yeah, that's kind of, you're like, what? There you go. I don't know if that goes together. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: define joy. What is your definition of joy?
Yeah, man, I think that's good. And I think that's finding the good in everything, finding the good in all circumstances and conditions, because again, a person of faith, one of the promises of the Bible, all things work together for good that are called by his name, and I love him. And I do, man. And I have to remind myself of that too, right? So it's not like I don't have moments of not joy, but I think it's finding the good in all circumstances, finding the good in the ups and the downs. You're gonna have the mountaintops, you're gonna have the valleys.
Sure.
But can you find the joy in those mountains as well? Sometimes people say, look what I did, and they get arrogant. I think there's celebration and joy in that. And the valleys, man, don't discard those valleys. There's tons of lessons, like I said, that you can learn in that. So again, I'm not saying I don't ever have bad days, but I would say finding the good in any of those situations you find yourself in.
But wouldn't you agree, like, at 47 years old, I'm not perfect at it, but I've had to develop a habit of keeping my joy.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I think that's a habit as well. Ed Milet talks about, life happening for you and not to you. But wouldn't you agree that it's a habit, right? It's another habit that you got to instill, because as a believer, one of the things I love about Christianity is that my joy is not based off of my circumstances, but is founded in a person who never wavers and changes.
That's right. Yeah.
So if crypto goes bankrupt, or if the government goes bankrupt, or if this, political party does this or that, if inflation goes way up, or if somebody on social media calls me I don't have to lose my joy, because I'm still in relationship with perfect joy. Absolutely. Do you see that in your own life?
Absolutely, right. And that's something I can control. I can't control what the government decides to do. I can't control what the weather does, right? If I depended on that for my emotions, then I would be way up and way down. And I want to kind of give you an example here too, because I don't want to get Well, that sounds good in theory, right? So this is a recent example. We had gone on vacation. We were flying back, and I don't know how many of you flown recently. There's a lot of delays and a lot of struggles and all of that. Well, we were trying to get to a connecting flight, and as we landed and we were approaching the gate for our connecting flight, they shut the door on not only us, but there were a lot of people on there. Shut the door on us, right? And we all had to go to the airline counter, and we sat there. It was literally 2 hours, and people were getting mad. Rob, I thought they were going to riot on the people at the counter because they were being rude as well. And I was kind of feeling it in me, right? I was like, man, I can't believe this. This is ridiculous how people are treating people here. And it hit me in the moment of what I just said. Hey, all things work together for my good. And I stepped back and I said, this is going to work together for my good. Something good is going to come of this. And we ended up having to stay the night, but we ended up having to stay the night in Orlando and swimming, right? We got to swim as a family. We were skiing one day, and the very next day it was 80 degrees, 85 degrees, and we were swimming. And that's what I'm saying too, is it's not only making it a habit, but it's also shifting your perspective when you need to as well. And so I hope that adds value and hope that makes sense.
Sure. No, I think it does. And it is something that we all must cultivate. I believe it's easier to do when you're in relationship with perfect joy, or the one who is the source of perfect joy, right? Of complete joy. So as we close today, I wanted to bring up a retreat. You have a retreat coming up here, and I know this is primarily maybe more people from around our area coming to it, but I mean, anybody can come to it, and we'll put the link in the description when this drops. But tell us a little bit about the retreat. What's it about? Why did you decide to do something like this?
Yeah, so we're calling it the Legacy Builders Executive Retreat, and it's designed for entrepreneurs. It's designed for business leaders who are kingdom minded. And what I found is that you get people like that who are like-minded, who are high achievers, kind of like what you're saying, high achievers, but who also want to continue to grow personally and professionally, but not at the expense of other things that are important to them, like their faith, their family, and their fitness. We'll talk about some of those kingdom values. Another thing about kingdom values we were talking about earlier is that I think you see the bigger picture. It's not just about me, myself, and I. It's about how do we advance the kingdom and make an impact in culture. So I created it, one, because of an experience I had that was such an impact on me that I wanted to bring that experience for other entrepreneurs and kingdom-minded leaders. So I want to create an atmosphere of growth. We know that all things have to have a specific atmosphere for them to grow in. You know, we're here in North Mississippi, and palm trees don't really grow here in North Mississippi, Rob. There's a certain environment they have to be in. Well, there's a certain environment I believe kingdom-minded leaders and business entrepreneurs have to be in order to grow. And that's what we're trying to cultivate there. And really being in the room with other like-minded individuals who help you up level your thinking. There'll be good teaching, but also connecting as well. So that's what we'll do. And the purpose is just such a life-changing experience for me. I wanted to bring it a modified version to where my circle of influence, right? And I'd love to have anybody there that would love to join us.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely put the link in the description. And I'm excited about being a small part and being there with you guys and growing and learning, you know, myself. As we close today, any final words that maybe God is putting your spirit that you just go, you know what, there's somebody out there. And I get a lot of people that watch this from the insurance space because that's the space I'm in, but just in any space, is there just any final thoughts or words that are just kind of boiling in your spirit that you just go, man, I got to share this before we close today?
Yeah, you know, I would say, to tone into what you said too, that everybody on here, you've got your own gifts, talents, and abilities. This world needs your gifts, talents, and abilities. And when we don't step into that, we not only hurt ourselves, but we rob the world of something truly incredible. And the other thing I would say is, don't take shortcuts, right? It's going to be easy, especially, I know the insurance industry. I know sometimes what that is like. I've talked to a lot of people in the insurance industry, and that's in any industry as well. It's easy and it's tempting to take the shortcuts, but I tell you, in the long run, it's well worth doing the work, doing the
Sure.
things the right way. All that other stuff, it'll shake out. But I would say just make sure you are doing things the right way. Don't worry about everybody else.
Sure. No, well, man, you definitely brought some fire today, and I'm so thankful that you came on. And obviously, I've enjoyed our friendship over the past few years. Maybe I'll have you come on again later down the road, and we'll talk about kind of that, because I think that's another whole message and podcast in itself. But as we close today, I just want to look in the camera, and I just want to just say this, that once again, I pray that something that we shared today put fresh wind in your sails. Maybe life has just deflated you, so to speak, or sucked all the wind out of you, and you're this close to maybe giving up. Can I just tell you something? There's a divine creator. There's a heaven that is cheering you on today, saying, don't, I have a purpose for you. I have a plan for you. And it's literally this simple, to just yield to his plan. It's literally that simple, of saying, God, I'm tired of doing it my way. I'm ready to lay my yes down in every area of my life in order for you to develop me and help me become the leader that you called me to be. As always, please like, comment, subscribe below, turn on the notifications. That way you're notified every time we drop fresh content like this. And I just want to say, God bless you guys. Make it an awesome day. It takes a lot of intentionality to make it an awesome day, even when the day is not so awesome. And we'll talk to you guys soon.